One of the many reasons so many people have issues with cannabis is because they've never learned what this medicine is.
The best words I have for it is that you just like are macrodosing on MDMA. Like,
I didn't even really know this was a Kundalini awakening.
dude, let's get started on this
Yeah.
conversation. I mean, first, I want you to just do like a little introduction about yourself. I think, you
Yeah,
know, just give a little introduction about who you are, and then we'll jump straight in.
definitely, dude. So thank you for having me, first of all. It's awesome to be on the show. And there's almost nothing I love more. I mean, fuck, there's a lot of things I love these days, but podcasting is one of my near and dear things to my heart because for me, I am a conversator. I integrate through words. When I'm even meditating, I meditate better as I'm walking and talking. Like it's just kind of how energy flows through me. And I'm a projector in human design, which is a really fun modality to get into. It really helped me understand myself from a deep level. And so this journey for me started, I mean, obviously when I was 0 years old, but to kind of foreshadow a little bit and get a little bit farther into the journey, when I was 16, I was diagnosed with anxiety and I was an aspiring musician, had all these hopes and dreams, and thought I just had stage fright. And then when I went to a doctor who diagnosed me, I now, quote unquote, had anxiety. And so I started to fall into that myth, right? Someone else's myth for my reality started to overtake my own reality because I didn't know how to consciously create my reality back then. I didn't even know what those words meant. And
Mhm.
so after a little bit of time of trying pharmaceuticals and not really, feeling any better, if anything, feeling worse and more disconnected with myself, I was also a product of the DARE program. And so I thought cannabis was all the things that many people still think it is. It's going to make you lazy. It's going to rot your brain. And a friend and I were talking, and I was telling him what I was going through and how it was really messing with my head because I was, wanting to perform and do all these things with music. And he was like, well, I'm going through something similar and cannabis really helps me. And, again, I don't know exactly how this conversation went, kind of went as a 16-year-old, but, what I remember is like, okay, what do I have to lose? Like I pretty much have anything to gain here. And so I tried it a couple times, might have Bill Clinton it, didn't exactly work. But the third time was the charm. And in that experience, I just had the knowing, like the clear cognizant knowing that I wasn't my thoughts. And so the mistake I made was I thought cannabis was the thing that did that. Not that it just revealed some aspect that was in my unconscious to myself. So that shifted me. I was no longer a slave to my anxiety, but I kind of became a slave to cannabis because I kept thinking I need more and more of this to operate in the way that it just showed me I can operate. Because I was a product just like you are and everyone else in the modern day world. If you grew up, you have a stomach ache, take a pill. You have a headache, take a pill. So, I wasn't used to thinking about things from the root cause perspective yet. And so after that, I got into school for psychology because I was fascinated with the mind. But pretty early on, I started realizing I don't want to wear khakis, so I'm not going to become a therapist. And so right around that time of me going through that dark night of the soul, I found a cannabis school that was opening near my house. Went there. My father actually went with me. My dad was not a cannabis lover or user, but when he saw how much it had been helping me, he was like, okay, I have no cognitive dissonance. I don't really know anything about this except what I was told to know about it. And so he's now seeing a different example, right? Someone who's connecting with cannabis, but has goals, aspirations, is working out, is doing the things that, could really motivate me to be the best version of myself. So him and I started going to the school together because he was really excited to learn what I was learning. And during that time, I ended up learning everything about the science, the history, the pharmacological benefits, the implications of organic farming and regenerative agriculture, Korean natural farming. I walked into the belly of the beast of just like the best teachers and the best people that were really in this for the right reason. We're talking 2011, 2012. So most of the people in it had been risking their freedom for years. And as such, their hearts were really in it. And so one of the things I learned at this school was cannabis's role in treating and curing cancer. And so for some people listening, that may be the first time I've ever heard that cannabis can do that. So the great thing about the modern day is I can tell people to go on PubMed and actually start looking at these things. Even the science, which I don't trust or follow, but even the science now is siding with this idea. And, cannabis being utilized in this way is not new. It's just been forgotten about and now getting remembered. And so as I started to be more around these patients that were coming in and I was interning for the school and working for them, it really shifted the course of my life. It got me much more into holistic health, got me much more into fitness and exercise, and all these things kind of snowballed. And when I was 23, my dad got diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so now all these things that I've been learning in theory and just applications through seeing other people do it, now I had to do, or I got to do. And so I started administering RSO, Rick Simpson oil, to my father, which is the modality for anyone listening who doesn't know what that is. That is the form of cannabis that is treating and curing cancer. It's not like people smoking weed and they're curing their cancer. They need a much more concentrated amount of cannabinoids to do this. And you can do that through making RSO, Rick Simpson oil. Its more professional name is FICO, full extract cannabis oil. But there's a great organization, Rick's organization, called Phoenix Tears. If anyone wants to look into it and see the thousands and thousands of stories doing this, people doing this, curing their own cancer at home, you can go check that out. And so I started administering it to my father, expecting that what I was going to be doing for him is helping him to the bathroom, answering questions. What I was really doing that I didn't know was opening his soul back up to his infinite state, or his real state, his whole state. And I got to witness that with him, and it changed me forever. And over the course of the next 10 months, which he was only given 2 months to live, but after about 10 months, I had created all the closure I ever needed to create with him, and him with me, and with my mother, and with my friends, because my parents were like second parents to all my kids growing up, or all my friends. And so, again, after about 10 months, he passed away. And, during that time, I just got this fire lit under my ass. Because, my dad was someone who was stubborn, he didn't want to stop smoking cigarettes and drinking soda and doing all the things. So I knew that he wasn't going to put in the real effort that was needed for him to survive. But I thought if I can ease his pain, in his final hours, this would be great. And what ended up happening, like I said, is it completely shifted the course and trajectory of my life. So I had just witnessed, first when I was 16 and now at 23, something that I had no information on when it came to cannabis. I thought it was a hot shot. I knew all this stuff about cannabis. And what dawned on me after my dad passed was, if I don't know how to articulate what just happened, I don't even know what cannabis is. It's kind of like thinking you know what ice cream is because you try to sprinkle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, sprinkles go on ice cream, but that doesn't even matter if you've never tried ice cream. And plus, if you try eating sprinkles on their own, they're disgusting. All right, I did that once in 5th grade. It's terrible. Don't do it. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. So I get into a dispensary and I'm fired up to bring love-grown cannabis to the world, to start talking to people what I just experienced. And most people coming in were just trying to numb their pain. They were treating cannabis like alcohol or anything else, just, pill culture. Oh, I have a headache, let me smoke weed. Oh, my psychology feels all messed up, let me smoke weed. And just forget it exists for a while. And so as people were coming in and they were kind of telling me like, oh, the cannabis isn't working anymore, I would start to ask them just out of curiosity, like, what's your water content? How much are you sleeping? Are you watching blue light at night? Like, just these things that I had also been really interested in learning from Paul Chek and people like that. And so I just started kind of like running my own little science experiment where I would have people start tracking these things and they would come back in and be like, my cannabis works again. And I'm actually getting all this awareness that I didn't have. And so I started being like, wow, this is really interesting, mixing cell development and cannabis together. But I didn't really answer the call then. It took a corporation buying out the dispensary I worked at and all the khakis and smells of paper and, pens coming back into my life to make me realize I needed to make a change. And so in 2019, I left the dispensary, started Highly Optimized. There's a lot, that goes into that. I mean, I went through a full-on Kundalini awakening. It was very tumultuous at times, but it was wildly amazing. And it's still really unfolding to this day. And, all I knew I wanted to create at first was a podcast, and I wanted to educate around cannabis. And that then spread into coaching when I met my first mentor, Mark England. And, I really give him a lot of credit. I just did a podcast with him the other day, and, he's a great, great friend in my life. And he really saw something in me before I ever saw it in myself. And he's like, you're going to be a great coach. And I was like, no, dude, I don't know. Like, I'll do this for me, but I don't, because I was still very nervous to be seen. I was nervous for me to see myself, which was really what was going on. And so I ended up getting into coaching, and cannabis and coaching were still separate realms for me. I was getting into mindset coaching and all these separate things, but I would bring my cannabis to all these get-togethers I would go to with Mark England and at Paul Chek's house and whatever, because that was my gift offer. It's what I do. And so people started asking me a lot about it. And so here I am wanting to like be this coach, that does mindset, and cannabis is like my hobby on the side. And people are all asking me like, yeah, cool, I'll tell you about coaching, but like, hey, what are you doing with this flower? Like, I've never had anything like this. And at that time, the people that were using my flower with me were not highly optimized individuals. I love them to death, but they just, they weren't into the kind of stuff that we're into with fitness and, allowing yourself to become more aware of the subtleties in life. And so I remember it was the first time I went to a Paul Chek workshop. I had gifted him a couple nugs at a class I went to, HLC1, Holistic Lifestyle Coaching Level 1. And I had gifted it to him, forgotten about it. And then a year later, now I've started my business, left the dispensary, all this stuff. It's December of 2020. And my buddy from back home in Boston is like, hey, I'm going out to see Czech. Do you want to come? I'm like, fuck yeah. Because Czech has always been one of my idols in life. And so I go out there and, I get to really hang out with Czech and his whole family and, Sherveen from Symbiotic, Kyle Kingsbury, all these people. I was like, whoa, this is wild. And I bring an ounce this time. And I gift it to Paul. I see him walking. I'm like, hey, buddy, I just want you to have this. And he's like, dude, you're that guy that gifted me that flower a year ago. And I was like, kind of that thing of like looking behind me, like, me? And he's like, dude, let me get your number. Like, how do I get more of this from you? He's like, do you sell it? I'm like, no, I just gift it out. That's like my, I just like doing that. He's like, well, dude, how do I get more of it? I've never had anything like this. And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, hey, you're a podcaster. Do you want me to connect you to other podcasters? And so then Paul Czech essentially opened up his Rolodex and we became very close friends. He connected me to Aubrey Marcus, Kyle Kingsbury. I mean, so many people, Ben Greenfield. And within a year and a half or 2 years of starting my business, I was appearing on Aubrey Marcus. I was personal friends with Paul. And this all happened because when I left the dispensary and went through that Kundalini awakening, one of the things I realized was that I was connecting with cannabis unconsciously. I wasn't using intention. And it just kind of poofed into my reality. I was like, oh my God, I can't unsee now what I see. And so I went home and I made a change. And I did 90 days with no cannabis, and a lot of stuff came up because I had been stuffing stuff down unconsciously. And during that time, that's what made me make all these shifts. It was like, I have to be a podcaster. This is burning out of me. I have to leave this job. It's not even a question, like, get out of here. I realized what my alignment really was. And during that time, after 90 days, I decided to go back to it with intention. And I started manifesting. And literally, this is what I tell everyone, like, guys, I was a pleb. Like, I didn't know this existed. I just literally started applying something that I was applying to other areas of my life onto another area of my life, which was cannabis, with the belief and knowing in myself that this plant medicine worked the same way as other plant medicines did based on the information I had experienced. And so I had a theory, I went out there and did it, and look what's happened. And so that's now what I teach other people how to do, is how to break addictive patterns, how to cultivate ceremonial grade flower. I do a full certification on how to get certified to facilitate and coach with cannabis, because my whole mission in life is to bring the unconscious into the conscious, and the tool I utilize to do that, that's the best and most efficient tool I've ever found, is cannabis. So that's really like a little expose on how I got to the screen here with you today, Ellis.
Yeah, no, perfect. You said a lot of things that I want to jump into in this call. Like mainly like how the industry got hijacked really quickly just through the hemp industry, and like I'd like you to discuss like how that happened, and as well as the different grade systems, because I think it's really important, especially in the spiritual community, to know these differences. It's like most people are smoking pesticides, they're not really smoking the plant medicine, whereas like you are introducing the ceremonial grade, which I think is the most brilliant thing that we
Dude,
really need to bring into this world.
I was so pumped when I got that idea because, for the listeners tuning in, I'll tell this first and I'll go backwards into the history and stuff. But, when I was sitting here one day connecting with cannabis and playing guitar, which is like my nightly ritual, and I don't do it every night, but a few nights a week, that's what I'll do. It's my inner child galore, and I have so much fun doing it. And I was sitting here one night and I was like, a lot of these craft growers out there are really just a smaller operation growing the exact same way the Walmarts of weed grow. So like it's craft because it's small, but like that's not what craft means. Craft beer, for instance, is very different than domestic beer. But with cannabis, it was almost like it was disguised as different, but it's the same exact thing. They're still using chemical salt nutrients. They're still giving you all the reasons why they have to do mold remediation after and why it's totally fine. Bullshit. It's this exact same thing. And so I started to be like, what's a way that I could actually discern between all this like, low vibration, terribly grown, poisonous flower and this stuff that I know and I've always called love grown cannabis. And so what came to me was ceremonial grade. And the great thing about that is that those of us that have done the work to rise our consciousness are going to be able to tell fucking immediately if someone is putting that name on and it's not actually what it says it is, because ceremonial grade is a lot more than just how it's grown. It's who it's grown by and how they grow themselves. So that's the main differentiator is, regular cannabis is just people growing a plant. That's how they look at it and selling it for money. Ceremonial grade is someone who has an intimate relationship with themselves first, and therefore anything that's seemingly external to them, even though it's not really external, because everything external is just a projection of the internal. And so as a result of that, these kind of people that grow are going to be doing the self-development work. They're going to be doing the narrative trauma work, the somatic work, the breath work, the meditation. They're going to be eating well. They're going to be doing all those things because they understand that if I'm not taking care of my mind, body, and spirit, then the distortions that are within my mind, body, and spirit are being projected into anything I look to create out there. And so these people are very aware of the energy they're putting out into the world. And they're also very aware of why they're looking to put certain energy into the world, because they're looking to be in the side of positive polarity, as the Law of One would state it, in service to others, coming from God-based consciousness, not the negative polarity that is ego-based consciousness. Now, when you talk about the industry being hijacked, really what I could say in a very quick way is that it's classic negative polarity. So negative polarity, if anyone's read the Law of One, have you read the Law of One before, Ellis?
Yeah.
So you get this. I loved this dichotomy. I thought it was so simple. Because again, negative polarity is not bad, okay? Even though negative is sometimes associated with the word bad, I don't want anyone listening to think bad. Because would Luke Skywalker have become Luke Skywalker without Darth Vader? And as a result of that, is Darth Vader really bad? Or is he playing a role that allows the hero to rise into its full expression? And so that's how I choose to see everything I'm about to say, because things are coming to light now. But back in the 30s, early 30s, and before that, cannabis was a part of over 60% of all medications on the market, okay? And then what happened was there was three individuals that got together. Andrew Mellon, who owned a big journalism empire at the time. And one thing to say too is we know how the mainstream media today works, all right? Even with the internet and the ability to be that's not true. Imagine if you had a journalism empire, you controlled all the newspapers at that time. That was really the only way people got information back then. So it was a lot more powerful even back then to be able to have a journalism empire like Andrew Mellon ran. Then there was William Randolph Hearst, who was a big investor in nylon and other textile industries. And then there was a guy named Harry Anslinger, who went on to become the first head of the Bureau of Narcotics, which is now the DEA. And so basically these three guys are hanging out one day, and they start talking about this hemp world and how hemp was going to put a lot of their investments out of business. Because if anyone knows how much more efficient hemp is to grow than wood, it is insane. Also, if you look at all the things you can do with hemp, you can make everything from paper to clothing to really anything in between. You can make hempcrete and build houses with it. You can create fuel from it. And the growing season is 90 days versus how long does it grow a tree? I have no idea, but years, all right? I planted the tree when I was a kid, and it's only 30 feet tall now, 30 something years later. So at the end of the day, it's a much more efficient way. So they see all this and they're like, uh-oh, because they're also in oil industry and gas and all this stuff. And they're like, shit, this one thing could put us all out of business. And so they were like, what do we do? Well, we're going to create mass hysteria through this smear campaign called Reefer Madness. So we watch Reefer Madness today and we laugh, but people back then really believed this. And for anyone who themselves, I guarantee they won't be listening to this podcast if they don't like cannabis, but for anyone that maybe you guys know, like a family member or whatever, after I tell you what I'm about to tell you, this is something you can educate people on. Because most people that don't like cannabis think they're not liking it because of XYZ study or whatever it is. Why they're really not liking it, at the root of it, is a bunch of racism and a bunch of just greed. And that's why all this smear campaign still to this day makes people think that a fucking plant should be illegal. It's actually comical if you think about it. We have literally got brainwashed to a point where people are arguing over what plants should be legal and illegal. It's kind of crazy. And a lot of these people are saying it comes from God, right? God wouldn't want it to be legal. I'm like, you guys are insane. And so at the end of the day, these three people get together, they create Reefer Madness, which then becomes the war on drugs. And so during this time, cannabis and other psychedelics get blackballed and they get made illegal. But the funny thing was they went to the governing bodies overnight and they created this whole myth that this brand new plant that had never been seen before, because everyone knew what cannabis was. No one knew what marijuana was. And so they went to Congress and, all these governing bodies overnight and were like, hey, there's this plant that Mexican men are coming over the border and raping white women with. And this is literally why I say, guys, if If any of you people out there don't like cannabis, you're supporting racism, okay? If you're just going along with it. If you don't like it because you don't like it, fine. But if you're just parroting what these people are saying, guess where this comes from? Very racist and weird shit. So they then basically get it outlawed overnight. And in the morning, all the doctors and health workers wake up and they go, wait, they made what illegal? And so to kind of quell all of their distaste, they say, well, no, guys, we're not going to make it fully illegal. There'll be these tax stamps that you can get. And when you get these tax stamps, you're allowed to have cannabis on you. And so if everyone could just please bring their cannabis to these tax stamp centers, we'll give you tax stamps and you guys will still be able to use it. Well, do you ever trust the government? No, right? Because they're coming from negative polarity. They're all about service to self. And so what they did was people showed up with their cannabis, they put them in jail. Oh, you guys don't have a tax stamp. We came here to get tax stamps. Yeah, but you don't have them yet, so you're getting put in jail. And they never gave the tax stamps out. And then it just kind of got swept under the rug. And that's how cannabis became illegal. Now, if you start to continue to move down into history or move forward into history, the question becomes, why would they now be wanting to legalize it? Right? Like, Ryan, that's cool, but like what? You're telling me like these people don't still have vested interest, the pharmaceutical industries, whatever? Well, this is why. If you read A Brave New World for Aldous Huxley, what do you learn in that? Well, you learn that, as the future continues to unfold in this book, people are basically pushed into just pleasure circles, right? Hedonism like crazy. And every time that people start to wake up and be like, hey, why are people doing this? They just dose them with this thing they call soma. And that makes them kind of like numbed to everything and they're easy to control. And so think about how cannabis has been portrayed in entertainment throughout the last 50 years. It's the thing that's going to kill you, first of all. And the only people we've seen using it are like Cheech and Chong, Pineapple Express. They've done a very good job of basically saying the only people that use this plant are dummies. And the other side knows it will kill you, and that's why they don't use it. And so now they've created this breeding ground where I saw it at the dispensary. People come in, oh, I just got to get my joints for the day, and then they go back to their job the next day. And it reminds me of this comedian talking about microdosing and why he doesn't like it. He's like, I don't fucking microdose. He's like, you got to macrodose this shit. He's like, wait, you're telling me there's a whole industry of microdosing? And the whole idea is, hey, if you eat just enough psychedelics, you'll be able to go back to your shitty job and handle it. Like, dude, you're supposed to blow the gourd off and realize time isn't real and this is all an illusion, right? And so at the end of the day, most people are utilizing cannabis with their unconscious intention based on the entertainment they've learned that cannabis is nothing except something to escape at the end of the night with. So abracadabra, as the creator of their reality, that's the experience they're creating. And that's why since I've come out and started talking about this stuff, there's now a lot of people. 5 years ago or 6 years ago when I started talking about this, almost no one resonated with it. Now, I'm seeing people I never talked to that figured it out on their own and are talking about it. And, again, we're starting a whole new narrative here around cannabis being the forgotten psychedelic, the most practical psychedelic it's ever been. And I think that one of the other challenges is that, we think about it this way. The world doesn't get worse, the world gets more aware. And so right now, a lot of people think the world's never been this bad, but really the world's just never been this aware. And so as a result of that, yeah, the industry looks really rough right now. Pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, glyphosate, all these things. What do we do about this? We do one of two things, or both. We realize that our money is what keeps these shitty corporations around, okay? So we need to be very intentional about where we place our funds, because that is a big amount of power for us. The second thing is we must learn how to discern what true high quality cannabis is, and spoiler alert, doesn't matter what it looks like, what the name is, or what the THC percentage is, and actual low quality cannabis, which can have all of those things. It can be high quality, it can look pretty, it can have a funny name, and be shit quality. And so within that process, we can find suppliers like my buddies at Sacred Smoke Collective that are truly putting out ceremonial grade THCA hemp flower, which is literally identical in every way, shape, and form to cannabis. And then we can do what I teach, which is how to grow our own. Because really, if you read The Adventures of Don Juan, plant medicine, if you really want to be integral with it, is meant to be grown by you. Like, as you grow a plant, you're creating your energy, with that plant, right? You're using your energy to create that plant. And the symbiotic relationship is after you've grown that plant and put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you harvest that plant, the plant reveals you to yourself because your energy is the thing that grew it. So a lot of things that are in your unconscious that you might not be conscious of, when you connect with this plant, all of a sudden become aware to you. And that's how you actually practice self-development through the cannabis path, is you utilize growing plants that can then inform you a lot about what is out of your purview. And like I was talking about with my buddy Hamilton Souther just a couple hours ago on a podcast, a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't need cannabis or whatever. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't need a plane to go to California, but yet you still take one, right? Why? Because it's more efficient, okay? And I think that a lot of people forget that there is no good or bad. Duality is a complete myth. And in the eyes of Creator / God, there is only the all, okay? And you can't have somethingness, aka condition, aka good and bad, aka light and dark, God and devil, whatever it is, if you're coming from true reality. You can only have condition, aka duality, in the dream that isn't real. And so I have a bunch of people out there that are making rules for a dream that doesn't exist. What I utilize cannabis for is to remember more of my reality and to stop believing the dream was real to begin with. And so for people out there that think cannabis is bad, abracadabra, it's bad for you, but not because it's objectively bad, but because you are creating the world in which it's bad. It's not for everyone, but it is for some people. And that's kind of how I speak about it today. And so that's a little bit about how the industry got to where it is today, and the negative polarity roles of just service to self, power hungry people. But the great thing is that with the age of Aquarius coming in, we're seeing through all this. We can't even stomach the idea of a 9 to 5. Everything now is collaboration over competition and decentralization. And that's the other way we fix this. I mean, think about decentralized medicine. Cannabis is the best example of this. I was saying a little while ago, people have been curing and treating their cancer for years with cannabis. Did they need a doctor for that? Nope. Did they need to get permission for that? Nope. They just grew plants, all connected together, helped each other out, and boom, it works. And so that is what's coming. And that's what I'm really excited about for the cannabis industry and beyond.
Yeah, no, exactly that, all you're saying. And I think a lot of people don't even think about it. It's like it's the intention you're going in with is like one of the most important parts in any type of plant medicine journey. It's like most people are just letting their subconscious, which they're not even aware of, create the experience they're about to have with the plant medicine. But the intention is like really key to the experience you're about to have on the plant medicine. Along with like, I don't think most people even realize like the ancient yogis, even the shamans and, all these great cultures were using this plant medicine like predominantly throughout, their whole traditions and stuff. Like this is why we have two different type of strains, like indica from Asia and then sativa from the Americas. I think that like stuff like that people don't even realize is super, you know, important, especially when you're on the spiritual path and you want to utilize plant medicine. So I know I've seen you talk about like your usage of plant medicine and the mixture of um, weed with it. And to me, I think it's a really good pairing. Not for everyone, obviously, but I think what it really does to the psyche when you're on that is it kind of flips everything on its head pretty like intensely. So I would like to hear more about like your perspective on what you should mix, if you should mix, and how you think about that type of stuff.
Great question. I've been waiting years to share this quote. This is Paul Chek's quote. I can't take credit for it, but I will share because I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. So a lot of men, fall in love with Paul Chek because he's got 2 wives. Okay. And the great thing I love about Paul Chek is that he does not mince words. He's like, hey, all you immature guys out there that think that I'm somehow living the dream over here, this is my situation. And what I'll tell you all is that until you learn to ride one horse really well, don't try riding two because it'll split you in half. So the analogy being that mixing is incredible. It can be incredible, can also be very confusing and very distorting depending on how much each person can handle. Now, I happen to be someone who, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I'm an Aries, I got a lot of fire in my chart, I enjoy mixing things. Yeah, whereas like my girlfriend is a Taurus, she kind of likes riding one horse. And I see that as perfect, right? Like that's what she needs. This is what I feel I need, And so there are certain things, I'll go through a lot of mixtures I've done, and then I'll kind of tell you what I would do as of today. Because what I've done in the past versus what I'll do today is a little bit different. So I've mixed cannabis into almost everything. I mean, literally everything I've ever tried. I've never tried any or every drug or anything like that. But, for me, I had a lot of time in my 20s where I was mixing cannabis with LSD, cannabis with psilocybin, LSD and psilocybin, LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA and cannabis, like just trying to go through a lot of that and just see kind of like what would happen. Use me as my own little science experiment. And what I found was cannabis is the equalizer. Because to me, what it does, right, is let's say this is your psychedelic experience right here, okay? Like you're in there, shit's getting all wobbly and weird, and you're just like, holy shit, you're in it. When you connect with cannabis, it kind of launches you out of it and you get to view it from that angle. And so from that angle, that zoomed out angle, you're able to see everything that's happening in a way that you can't when you're inside of it. It's almost like if you're in a hurricane versus all of a sudden you're in the plane looking at the hurricane. It's like you can tell, like, well, there's a lot of shit going on down there, but you're also separate from it. And so that's what I find cannabis to be really good at. Now, what I found though is that I like including cannabis with different things, like with psilocybin. If I'm on a high dose of psilocybin, I'm going to definitely perfect riding that horse before I include cannabis into it. Not because it's scary, let's say, but because it just, there's things that psilocybin is very good at doing, and there's things that cannabis is really good at doing. Psilocybin to me feels like kind of like, this is going to be a little weird, but it's like kind of like douching you. It's like taking like if you've ever had a volcano bag that has some air in it and you kind of squeegee it all up and then you push it out. Psilocybin will just kind of like push everything that's dense out of you, whereas cannabis will kind of allow you to view that. But if you're pushing everything out and it's really somatic and you include cannabis into that, sometimes it can dissociate you away from that experience that I really think is best to be felt and really like viscerally experienced. Versus, let's say you're on a 5 gram dose of mushrooms and you've reached the peak and you start to come down a little bit. And now your ego's starting to come back a little bit. It's not getting any stronger. That to me is the perfect time to include cannabis, because now you can zoom out and kind of be like, okay, what the hell did I just experience? Because I've been so in it, I haven't had a chance to actually like integrate and make sense of it. Cannabis to me is integration medicine. It's the medicine that I do on the tail end or even a day after I've gone through a different medicine. The one exception being MDMA. With MDMA, I will include cannabis almost right from the start because I just find they dance extremely well together. But for all other medicines, LSD and psilocybin specifically, I find that I like to go through almost the whole experience and then do it at the tail end because it's just the greatest integration medicine. And that's really how I utilize it even in my sober state of reality. Like if I have a couple of days where I'm sober and, I go through some challenges, I write some triggers out that happened. Well, then when I connect with cannabis, I'll make the intention to go directly back into that trauma and see it from an angle I didn't see it from before. And that will allow me to make my own meaning out of it, make my own story, not just take the story that's given to me through my lineage. I'll be able to make my own story that allows me to be propelled forward, not held back. And I think that's why one of the many reasons so many people have issues with cannabis is because they've never learned what this medicine is and therefore how to utilize it in the way that's going to be best self-serving for them. And they've also never learned anything. I mean, most people about mindset, heart set, what it takes to be a healthy body, what a real fulfilling life is. All we've been taught is like the Pythagorean theorem, a bunch of very distorted history from the winners of wars, and then a bunch of random facts. That's what we were taught in high school, in grade school. Then we go to college and we're paying 4 times the amount of money to just learn the same shit said differently. And then we go out into the world and we have no idea how to think. We just know what to think. And so as a result, if you take that kind of consciousness and you use a non-specific amplifier for it, like cannabis, what do you think it's going to amplify? It's going to amplify whatever's already in you because it's not making you anything. It's not turning you into something you're not. It's revealing you to yourself. And so a lot of people don't like what's shown to them when they utilize a plant medicine they don't know how to use. And so then they blame the plant medicine, oh, it was cannabis, forgetting that the plant never held a gun to their head. They chose to connect with it. And until they take accountability and ask, why did I choose to do this? If this sucked so bad, why did the part of me think it was going to be so good? Because maybe there's a part of you that's being protected against from your ego that actually sees this experience being very positive, but you're not able to see that because you're not able to understand how to work with your mindset and how to uncover the stories that are working in the background of your life. And so, again, like there's a lot of, kind of multifaceted things here, but that's a lot of, how people get into some hot water with cannabis, and also what I think really mixes well. They can all mix well, but I think they mix really well on the tail end because it really helps you integrate the huge experiences you can have on other psychedelics and also with cannabis as well, and just regular life. I mean, life itself can be a wild experience. I think it is for a lot of us. And so, to be able to have a tool that allows you to reflect and see things from different perspectives, I think is invaluable in life. I see it just like any tool. Why do I utilize spring water versus tap water? Well, I understand spring water is much more alive, so I'm going to utilize that tool. Could I survive on tap water? Maybe not as long, but yes, I could. And so this kind of argument people have of like, you shouldn't need cannabis. I'm like, you keep beating that drum. Have fun. I'm going to go light years ahead of you because I'm utilizing a tool that was put on God's green earth for us to utilize. The same way that, like you were saying, if you look back into like ancient history with cannabis, every single part of the world had tribes that were utilizing this. You want to look at Islam, it was the Sufis. You want to look at the Middle East, or like you want to look at Europe, it was the Scythians. Ancient Russia, ancient China, ancient Jerusalem. That's an interesting one. If you read Chris Bennett's work, they're finding hashish residue in the Holy of Holies in ancient Jerusalem. So, again, this isn't even just like plant resin, because that's what a lot of these naysayers will say. Well, yeah, they used it for textiles, but they weren't getting intoxicated. Rather, they were using hash, okay, and the Holy of Holies, which is where they'd go into to see God. So there's a lot that's been covered over, not only that, but the worshiping of the feminine that came before the masculine. There's so many things that have been covered over in our history, because who typically wins a war? Who wants to fight a war? Not someone who's coming from positive polarity, someone from negative polarity. And what do they exist on? Control. And what's the best way to control history? Control the narrative of history. And so again, like, sometimes I actually wonder how this is so challenging to see for other people, but that's why you and I are doing what we do, to spread the good word of the world and say, hey, whether you like cannabis or not, whether you like mushrooms or not, whatever, make it your decision. Don't just parrot what someone else said and completely lose your ability to create your own reality. Nothing is for everyone, but the main muscle we're here to wield is discernment of what true good and true evil is. And really, what we're meant to discern is above that. The duality never even existed, and that all there is love. But we can only do that when we actually learn to think about our thinking and feel into these deeper layers in life. And cannabis has been a tool for thousands upon thousands of years to do that, just like other plant medicines have been.
Yeah, I'm with you on I mean all of it, but especially when you're like pairing it with psychedelics, especially like towards the end of it, because it's like you really need to get the grasp of the journey you're on before you can kind of take on that next journey. And it just gives you that, other view, just like traveling does. Like you just see how different perspective it can be.
Yeah.
Um, what's really interesting to me, throughout my experiences, the I guess the differences that has appeared in my experience on those type of psychedelics after Kundalini awakening. Because after my Kundalini awakening, you start to not even have the same effects that you once did. It almost as if the drug doesn't work on you. It obviously still does on a chemistry level, but you get to a point of some type of realization that like there is no transition between even like, there's no visual transition, there's no body transition and anything. So I was wondering if you've experienced anything like that through your own Kundalini awakening.
Definitely. And, what I noticed and how I kind of say this is, for me, when I was younger, it was all about the high. Like I wanted to
Mm,
feel the high, the eyes low, whatever people think when they, think about the high. And
mhm.
what changed for me after my Kundalini awakening was I could care less about the high. I care about what the high brings out in me. And so, like, I could literally, and a lot of times I'll connect with CBD flower, but I do find THC has a role in opening this stuff up. But I don't like super strong flower. I don't like concentrates. I used to love all this stuff. I'm not against them. It's just not my cup of tea anymore. Because what I like to do is connect with the plant and then figure out, like, how do I play music differently? What part of me is opened up now that wasn't opened up before? That maybe I didn't even know was there, let alone was closed before. How can I see a challenge that Rachel and I just went through, my partner, from a different angle? like what starts to become available, what parts of me are still being covered over by certain parts of me that maybe learned somewhere in my life were either not safe, not good, not worthy of expressing, whatever it may be. But what are those things, And so for me, if I get too high, I lose all that. It's just like now I'm dissociated. I'm right back where most people are trying to get to. That's they think the whole goal is. For me, there's like a really fine line of like a Goldilocks zone. And this is one of the reasons too that I do enjoy mixing tobacco with my cannabis. Because for me, even being someone who's connected with cannabis, a lot throughout my life, I can get pretty darn high sometimes off like 2 or 3 hits of my own flower. And so as a result of that, I like tobacco because I can get pretty airy fairy and up there if it's just cannabis. Tobacco makes me feel like I have one leg on the ground, like I'm firmly planted, but I can look up and see all the stars and see everything there. And so I found for me that tobacco and cannabis work really well together for this purpose because it ensures I don't get too much of the high, but I'm still able to like have my cake and eat it too. And spoiler alert, the cake is gluten free. Is my silly joke. But yeah, good question.
Glyphosate free.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly, dude.
yeah, no, I found that exact same thing. It's like when you take the tobacco, it's like you're stimulating the front of the head, but the weed's all about the back of the head, the subconscious. So it's like
Yeah.
that just pairing keeps you in that level state that like sober, Kundalini awakening keeps you in normally. So
It's like peanut butter and jelly, dude.
yeah,
You know?
straight up, straight up. Yeah, I'm curious more about your Kundalini awakening. I haven't heard you talk too much about it throughout the
Yeah.
videos I've seen you. So I would like to hear about it because to me, it's one of the most interesting topics going through a very crazy one myself, like very like energetic, very visual, like seeing everything to this day. I'm just like so curious of how this technology of the body works because no one really understands it.
It still mystifies me, bro. Like, I didn't even really know this was a Kundalini awakening because it's like it's a very like ineffable experience. Like, there's no words for it. It's like trying to explain 5-MeO DMT. It's like I ripped a pen and then I was gone and then I came back. I don't know what the fuck happened in those 10 minutes. So I didn't even really know it was a Kundalini awakening until I was chatting with Aaron Abke one of the first times we hung out, and I was telling him about it. He's like, "Bro, that was a Kundalini awakening." I'm like, "No shit," And so basically, what happened was in 2019, the corporation bought us out, and I was feeling really frustrated at work. The place that I used to love going was now like kind of like one of my least favorite places to go, and I was going through a dark night of the soul, and I had a lot of unconscious victim tendencies at that time in my life. Like, oh man, like this job was so good, they ruined it. What am I gonna do now? Like, all that kind of stuff. And I was playing the blame game, blaming them for doing all this silly shit, and they were doing a bunch of silly shit, but I forgot that I have control of the narrative here. I didn't know that at that point in my life. And so in October of 2019, I bought tickets for me and Rachel and my buddy Devin to go out to MJ BizCon in Vegas, which is the largest cannabis convention. And we were going to go out there, find our own investors. It's going to be easy. Super, super simple. Everyone's going to get love grown cannabis out there. Everyone's going to want to get on board with us, and we're going to make our own dispensary. And so we go out there and we go to MJ BizCon, and it was like walking into the fucking belly of the beast. It was like every Chad and Brad was there, just being like, "How many grams per square foot can you grow? Can you grow me?" One of the guys had a dispensary he named after his fucking yacht. So it was like that kind of energy. Which again, like I'm not judging, just not my flavor of ice cream. All right, that shit
Right.
makes me feel heebie-jeebies inside. All right, it's like the polar opposite of everything I am. And so on the last night there, we were at some like little like party. Devin was really good at finding all these like kind of pop up parties with Steve D'Angelo and like all these people. So he had got us some party, and it was last night there, and I was feeling pretty bummed out. And I asked Rachel, I said, "Hey babe, it's the last night here. What do you want to do?" Because I was kind of watching our dream and our expectation we came out there with burn in front of us. And I honestly thought, Ellis, that what she was going to say was something like, I don't know, get an early night in or figure out what we're going to do when we get home. Maybe go on Indeed and apply for new dispensary jobs, like whatever. And what she actually said was, do you want to take Molly and go to a strip club? And I was like, yeah, I do. I had, as funny as it sounds, I had never been to a strip club in my life. She had never been to a strip club in her life. So I was just like, this sounds fun. Like, I have no idea what to expect, but I like intensity. All right, I'm an Aries, you get it. So I
Hmm.
was like, I'm down. And like, I'm doing this with my girls to be fun. And it was completely like, I know that any of the women listening to this will be like, yeah, sure, dude. But I swear it was like so PG. I was just excited. I was like, this is going to be so fun. And so we go to the strip club, we take MDMA, we get there, and immediately, the strippers come over, they walk over to your table. And they're like asking us questions, and we're just like asking them like, "What's your life plan? How'd you start working here? This is so cool," like. And they're like, "Hey, like you guys are a little bit different." And we got a couple strippers in trouble because they were just talking with us, hanging out, and they'd be like, "Oh, do you want me to like get naked?" I'm like, "Oh, whatever," like I didn't. It didn't even matter. I was just having so much fun. And Rachel had tasked me with getting us home on time. We had a flight the next day, so she wanted to be out of there by 4, reasonable time, and get like 6 hours of sleep, hop on the plane, it'd be fine. So I lost track of time completely. I was having so much fun, and at one point I looked down at my phone and it said 7:38 a.m. And I was like, because the whole strip club was like packing up, and I'm like, this is Vegas. They can't close at like 3 a.m. And I look, and I'm like, oh my god. And anyone who's done MDMA, it's like being a kid again. You lose time. So I realized I had fucked up, and so I went to tell Rachel, and she got upset with me. Right? Not like super upset, but she was working on a very boring project. And this project was building an application for an Illinois dispensary. Talk about like the smell of paper haunting you in your nightmares. So she had to work on this in the plane ride. And so she was just like, oh my God, how am I going to fucking do that with no sleep? And so I accepted full accountability for maybe the first time in my life. I didn't notice I did it. It wasn't something I thought about. I just was like, babe, I fucked this up. Like I gave you my word and I fucked it up and I'm sorry. And in that moment, she was like, it's fine, it's no big deal. But in that moment, I felt something big shift in me. But I didn't really, I was like, I'm on drugs, like maybe I just, whatever. I kind of logicked my way out of it and went back to the hotel, got a whopping hour of sleep, and then went to the airport. And so I'm on the plane. I have this like kind of, looming migraine happening. And I'm starting to like go in and out of consciousness in the plane. And I start talking to my soul because I learned how to talk to my soul through Paul Chek. And so I start talking to my soul and I'm like, hey, what was that thing last night in the club? That shift I felt. And my soul was like, that was you processing emotions. And I was like, huh? Like emotions? Like, dude, everyone processes emotions. Like, no, what was it? My soul's like, oh, why don't you tell us what you think you process in terms of emotions? And I'm like, well, I feel happy. I feel joy. I feel euphoria. I feel excitement. I feel inspiration. My soul was like, do you notice anything about all those? I was like, I don't know. They're all good. And my soul was like, yeah, you think there's bad emotions and you're not feeling those ones. And I was like, oh shit. And then I was like, well, how has this happened? And then my soul just showed me my whole thing, my whole life. I mean, since I was like 16 and started connecting with cannabis, but it showed me an image of me going to the dispensary. I got to see myself from above, talking to people all day, having these people that ran the dispensary now coming out, annoying me building up resentment all day, and then coming home with all the fucking motivation to make a change. And then I just smoke weed and numb myself. And then I go back to work the next day and it was like Groundhog Day. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So I went home, took that 90-day break, and about maybe a week into this break, I was feeling unbelievably good. Like I was feeling so good because I was starting to feel all these emotions. And I remember I was driving to a massage. I used to get a massage every 2 weeks in Plymouth from this guy, Chris, awesome guy. And I had been going there forever. And so I'm driving in the car and I decided to put A Day to Remember on, which is like a band I listened to in high school. And so I'm singing along with it. And it was this point where I was singing and I matched the pitch of the guy singing and it just cracked through. And all of a sudden I just felt like, oh my God. And I started like crying. I'm like going 80 down the highway, 65 speed limit. And I'm like literally like crying, laughing. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? And I start to get all these fucking tingles going through me. And this proceeds to keep going for 6 fucking weeks. And it gets stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where I'm like, I feel like I'm going to explode. And then after about 6 weeks, I connect with cannabis again. Because after about 6 weeks, I realized cannabis didn't do this to me. I took the action. I'm not addicted to cannabis. I'm addicted to getting out of discomfort. And that's when it really got supercharged. And I was waking up with the fire vein shit that Aaron talks about. I'd wake up like fucking so awake at like 3 in the morning. And I sleep like a rock. Like my sleep is amazing. And so I'd wake up like fully charged. And I would just start journaling or I would do breath work. And I didn't know what the fuck was happening. I just thought I'm feeling the best I've ever felt in my life. It was a very confusing time. That was when like I literally let my hair down. I'd been having headaches for like 3 years because I was so stressed out and just so victimizing myself. And after this starts happening, one day I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, dude, why do I always have my hair up? And I put my hair down and the fucking headaches go away. After I had spent so much money on all these things to get my headaches to go away, and it was metaphorical. I literally just let my fucking hair down in life. And all of a sudden, things just started opening up for me. I started going with the flow instead of trying to force. And that was the big thing. And that's been the surrender experiment I've been in ever since. Where, I was just talking to someone else about this earlier, where I was saying, like, I think there's a lot of people right now who are getting thirst trapped by their feelings. So, again, you hear in the spiritual space, like, your body, your body, your body. Well, I got news for you. Your body's not actually real, okay? It's part of this dream illusion. So, is there intuition? Yes. But it takes a lot of self awareness to be able to discern what is intuition and what's just your ego stopping you from edging your comfort zone. And so, for instance, you think the first time I went to the gym, I wanted to go? No. I just knew there was a reason I needed to go. So I went. I didn't want to. You think I wanted to get into coaching? Like, I was terrified, fucking terrified to put myself out there, but I did it anyway. Think I was excited and open to fucking doing anything I've done? No, it's all terrified me, but I just knew that's what I had to do. And so I think that's part of the challenge that people go through right now is that what is a Kundalini awakening? Like the best way I can think about it, it's the moment that you realize and remember everything we're talking about. It's when you remember, even if you're not consciously aware of it at the time, something deeper in you remembers who and what you truly are. And it also starts to remember all the ways, and it starts to laugh at and cry at and all the emotions around how you've actually handled life so far and all the ways in which you've stopped yourself. And it allows you to start to see, like, okay, I know what intuition feels like now. And I also know what is just my subconscious, whose physical manifestation is the body, just stopping me from my next level of growth. And I think that was one of the main things I learned from my Kundalini awakening was that, but that's really how it was for me. And dude, there are so many parts I could talk about. During that Kundalini awakening, I didn't even have an Instagram yet. So I was like pouring my heart out on Facebook. And I had heard this guy on a podcast 3 years prior when I was working at the dispensary. Rach and I would listen to this podcast called Positive Habits, this guy, Brandon Beecham. And there was this guy on, and we listened to every episode, like hundreds of them. And there was this one guy on that talked about language creating your reality, and his name was Mark England. And I remember when her and I listened to it, we both loved it, and then we kind of just forgot about it. Well, 3 years later, I'm pouring my heart out on what I thought perspective was on Facebook, and I started to talk about how language creates your reality. Someone comments, "Hey, where'd you learn that?" And I'm like, "Oh, what was that guy's name?" And I tag him on Facebook. I never talked to him. An hour later, I get a message, my first voice note ever, which now I only voice note people. And it was Mark being like, "Yo, I like what you're doing on there. Like, we should hop on a call." And he's the one that got me into coaching. I had literally $2,500 to my name left, and that's how much his program cost. You think that felt good in my body to say yes to? Fuck no, it didn't. But it felt good to something deeper than my body, something more real than my body. So I said yes to it. Got in there, started to meet all these different people. Then the pandemic happens. I got all this time on my hands. Then Mark starts inviting me down to meet all these people. I was terrified to do that. Did it anyway. Went down there. When I go down there, a lot of people are talking about the next adventure in a week they're going to go to in Colorado. I'm like, I'm terrified, but I'm going to say yes. Then we go there, and the guy's talking about going to Mexico next. I'm like, terrified, never been to Mexico, but I'm going to go. And that has literally been the surrender experiment I've been on, that if something's happening in my reality, it must be that I'm ready for it. So, that's something my Kundalini awakening definitely kind of anchored into my being, is that I might not feel ready, but if God's showing me it, then I'm already ready. And all I have to do now, or all I get to do, is just remember that I've always been ready for everything, because you can't have somethingness within oneness. Oneness is everything. And so you're always going to feel ready, unready, all the things. You get to make the decision of what energy you act from. And that's what the Kundalini awakening really taught me.
Yeah. No, obviously anyone who's had a Kundalini awakening, relates to that very much, especially like how confusing it is at first. Like I was thankful that I had already done enough studies because like I know I had already known about you and Aaron Epke and so many other people who were talking about it, but it's one thing to know about it and then to experience it. Um, but it is crazy because it's like, I didn't even know, like, I didn't take MDMA before that, but, the best words I have for it is that you just like are macrodosing on MDMA like nonstop after that. And you're just like, oh
Yes.
man, it's like, why even
Yes.
take MDMA at that point? The portal's already open.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Um, So, I mean, let's wrap this up. And I have a few just smaller questions.
Yeah.
I want you to talk about like I was getting told the other day the difference between sativa and indica and its
Mm.
relationships to the chakras.
Mm.
So, can you expand a little bit upon that one?
Yeah, dude, I love this question. So I'll be the first to say sativa, indica, and hybrid is kind of a myth these days because everything's been hybridized. But I still like
Hmm.
using the system because, again, most people know cannabis around that. So we're going to
Right.
use the system, but just so people know, it is a little more complex these days because everything's been hybridized. But
Right.
strains that are typically sativa based, like you're going to smoke it and get energy, they're really good at opening your throat, third eye, and crown chakra. And I think that makes sense, right? Like most people that smoke sativa want to talk more. They're like, getting ideas, they feel connected to source. Whereas hybrids, like a pretty 50-50 hybrid, are really good at a balance point, right? So what's the balance between the top three chakras and the bottom three chakras? It's the heart. So they're really good at opening the heart. And so I like hybrids for when I maybe have to have an uncomfortable situation or a conversation with Rachel. Maybe I've stepped out of line and now I got to put my tail between my legs and talk about it. Things like that where I'm like, okay, you know what? Like this is going to help because I'm able to talk, but I'm also able to feel into the feelings coming up so I can process them. Sativas I like a lot when I'm just like talking with friends. We're ripping bags, kind of like we're doing here.
Mm.
And so then indicas, strains that are classically indica based, are really good at opening the bottom three chakras. So really good for like trauma work, sexual healing, and a lot of like solar plexus I am power as well, like identity focused work. And so what I like to do personally is I know that I don't know. And so, because of that, my brain might think this is what I need, but I've learned enough in my life to know that I don't really know that. There's just a part of me that's identifying, like, again, if I'm the all, then I really need everything and nothing at the same time. It's paradoxical. So, what I like to do is mix those together, create like an alchemy blend or a salad of sorts, where I put some indica, some hybrid, and some sativa together, and I let God sort it out. I connect with it, and it kind of goes to wherever I'm needing the support. And so, it's funny because as I was growing up, it was like sacrilege to combine strains, especially in the cannabis industry. People were like, how are you going to get the terpene notes? And it's like, guys, we're missing the forest for the trees. Like, who cares what it
Mm.
tastes like if you don't actually see God with it? Like, but
Right.
most people don't know that you can do that, so they don't really think about that. But that's how I like to do it: is mix all three together, and you can go crazy with this. Like when we did the Breathe With Cannabis retreat, I brought 22 different strains I had grown out there. And so we mixed all 22 together. So, variety is the spice of life. And so if you have like, if you're a grower and you have a bunch on hand, mix as many as you possibly can. And what it does is it opens up more of the entourage effect, which is that when all the aspects of cannabis are working together, spoiler alert, or shocking statement, the plant works better. Said differently, when you connect with the plant as nature perfected it, and you don't connect with these silly isolates that people make or whatever, it works better. Why? Because nature doesn't make mistakes. Humans make mistakes, and humans come from nature. We are nature, but we are not, existing as pure nature. We're existing as ego based consciousness as well. And it's fun to do the science stuff and pull out certain compounds, but I don't want anyone to ever think it's going to be as good as the natural plant. So when you mix all those together, you get the entourage effect. For people that don't like sativas, well, mix it with an indica. That way, the CBD from the indica is going to counteract the negative side effects of too much delta 9 THC, like too much upregulation in the nervous system and things like that, which especially for, people of today, most of us are pretty upregulated. And what is that? It's anxiety. So no wonder so many people, quote unquote, get anxiety or paranoia from cannabis. They're not getting it. It's just revealing that to them. So if you're someone who kind of realizes like, dude, I am really upregulated, but maybe I do want some of those ideas to come out from the sativas. Okay, just mix it with an indica. Now you get best of both worlds. So there's always ways to tango with cannabis in a way that allows you to kind of be, protecting yourself when it comes to what you're able to handle. And all it takes is very little education like this, right? Just things that we've never learned before. And so the great thing is it's very easy knowledge to understand. It's like, okay, if I feel really stressed out, maybe have some indica if I'm going to smoke a sativa. Or if I feel really lethargic, probably want a sativa. It's like it's pretty simple to understand that. So yeah, that's how I
Hmm.
differentiate it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm with you with I mean, those things are good frameworks, but it's kind of hard in today's society. Like, you gotta really know what you're trying to get,
Yeah,
especially just how crazy it keeps getting. I mean, even in Louisiana, it's not really legal, but you see it all over. It's like you have signs all over about it. So it's
mm-hmm.
like, what are you actually getting is a hard question out there.
It really
Um,
is, man.
Yeah, my last question is, I'm also into like the whole music fest stuff, and like when we first met, you were pointing out my friend's Closey shirt and stuff. So I was very interested. Like, what's your favorite like artist, EDM artist? Because I know you play a lot of guitar and listen to a lot of old
Yeah,
music. So I also want to hear that as well. So what are your two
dude,
favorite,
love this
as at
question.
least right now, at least right now?
Yeah. My favorite electronic artist, and almost no one knows about this guy. Please go check him out. He's so fucking sick. Is Kalia Scintilla. You ever heard of Kalia Scintilla?
He sounds familiar, but I'll have to listen. I'm bad with names.
He's very like same, but definitely different to Desert Dwellers or like he's from Australia, and he
Mhm.
also has another alias named Merkaba that's more like Australian Psytrance, higher BPM. And
Mhm.
the best show I've ever been to was when he did both those aliases. He started as Kalia, which is lower BPM, kind of like tribal bass stuff. And then
Mhm.
he slowly transitioned into Merkaba. Bro, it was unbelievable. I've seen him a bunch of times. He doesn't tour in the US all too often, but when he does, like, definitely catch him. It's an unbelievable show. And then in terms of like other artists that I love, man, dude, right now, it's been interesting. Another like small Kundalini awakening I've gone through in the past year is, or really 3 years, but really over the past year, is just how much music has exploded back into my life. I was a guitar player, obsessed for like years when I was a kid. And then in my 20s, I was going to festivals and whatever and kind of put it to the wayside. And I have really picked it up over the past 3 years. And there's a guy I love who's a legit prodigy, man. This guy it's Stevie Ray Vaughan reincarnated, which is Taj Farrant. He's also from Australia. I didn't think about that beforehand,
Mhm.
but he's also from Australia. And he has this song called Crossroads. I mean, for being a 15-year-old, dude, this kid is singing blues like he's got three ex-wives and four kids. It's just like, it's unbelievable, man, what this guy's doing. I also am a huge Skinnerd fan. I love Pantera. I mean, metal was really my whole thing growing up, and I've been getting a lot back into it.
Mhm.
The 69 Eyes, him, CKY, all that kind of stuff from the Bam Margera days. But a lot of that kind of stuff is really near and dear to my heart. And, it's funny because people will say, oh, metal, that's pretty negative. And I'm like, if you believe it is, I mean, it goes back to the same thing. Like, what myth are you telling yourself about anything? Because you're the creator creating all of this. So that's my favorite electronic artist. But like I was talking to you guys about when we were at Casa de Luz, I've been to so many festivals. I've seen like every artist I wanted to ever see like 5 times over. I love Grizz and the funk. I love the tribal dirty bass stuff. I was a big res guy for a couple of years, that industrial kind of like techno bass type shit. I also love regular trance. I love house. I pretty much love everything. I've even been loving like Billy Strings recently and a lot of that kind of like bluegrass country. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm turning into at this point, but it's so fun. And I just bought the ticket and I'm along for the ride. So, yeah, man, music's been a huge part of my life. And I really don't think there's anything more uh, similar or more often included with cannabis than music, maybe
Mhm.
movement, but and that's been another big part of my life is movement. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, we haven't even gotten into that. I definitely will have questions for, I guess, next time.
Hell yeah.
Because I have so many questions about your journey and through movement and all that. So
Hell yeah,
we'll have to do
dude.
this again.
We'll have to do it again, bro. Signed, sealed,
Yeah.
delivered, dude.
I mean, do you want to shout out anything else? And I'll leave whatever you want to shout out in the description as well.
Yeah, I first want to say thank you, Ellis, for a great interview, man. You asked great questions, and I've had a lot of fun. My battery feels fully charged, which is one of my core values, being a battery charger and being around other battery chargers. So thank you for that, man. And do you know when this episode will go out, roughly? Like week,
Um,
2 weeks, month,
it'll
2 months?
probably come out either a week from now or like next Sunday.
Okay,
So
perfect.
pretty, very fast.
Perfect. So, for anyone listening, just know that by the 19th of November, I'm going to have a lot of stuff added to my website in terms of free workshops coming up. Okay. I do a lot of free workshops. I'm going to do one on breaking addictive patterns. I'm going to do one on cultivating ceremonial grade flower. I'm going to be doing some Breathe With Cannabis workshops. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but for anyone who's like, I don't believe this guy, cannabis isn't a psychedelic, cool. Don't believe me. I don't want anyone to believe me at face value. Come out to a Breathe With Cannabis event. We do a 7-day free trial. You don't even have to pay for it, okay? Come try it out yourself, and you tell me after you've gone through a ceremony if cannabis is a psychedelic. I got nothing to prove to anyone. So we do. We're going to be doing a couple of those coming up. We have the Emotional Mastery Edition happening on November 23rd, and I'll give you that for the show notes because for anyone listening, I'll just tell you guys straight up. I got nothing to hide here. Wait till the 16th of November. Go sign up for a free trial, and then you get that live ceremony for free. And you can also check out 2.5 years of past recordings. And if you don't think it's the coolest thing you've ever experienced, cool. You can leave the community. We don't have any contracts. We're not keeping anyone there. We like to have complete autonomy and sovereignty when it comes to there. The only people in there are people that want to be there. So it's only a $33 a month subscription for literally the most fun and crazy healing you'll ever get in the comfort of your own home. But, again, if people don't want to stay, it's all good. It's not for everyone. So we do that. We'll have some of those coming up. And then also, I'll be doing some really cool stuff with a couple of friends of mine that run Sacred Smoke Collective. So I'll make sure to have you put that in the show notes too. For anyone looking to find ceremonial grade flower, I have the hookup. Okay, I've worked for 5 years to find a company I can put my name behind, and this company is it. So the great thing is they can ship to pretty much any state in the US. I'm sorry for anyone that's listening internationally. I'll have to figure out ways over there to find stuff like this. But for anyone in the US, you can get it delivered right to your door legally now, even if you're in states where it's completely illegal still, because THCA hemp flower is under the hemp law, and that's federally legal. So I'll have you put that in the show notes. You can use code HIGHLY at checkout. You get a 15% savings. And the prices are amazing. I think it's only like $180 an ounce anyway on there. And then with the discount, it's like 165 or something. So I'll make sure to have you put that in the show notes too. And then we will be starting our next round of Coach with Cannabis soon. So for anyone feeling the call to actually get certified and go out there and be able to include cannabis into your coaching practice, or to be a cannabis coach, like maybe you're starting from the ground up and you really just want to work with cannabis, great. So whether you're already a coach and you want to add this into your skill set, it mixes with everything. I do business coaching with it, mindset coaching, transformation coaching, somatic coaching. I mean, literally anything can be enhanced by connecting with cannabis, because all you're doing is having your client open their subconscious. So when you add more awareness happens. And so those are some things coming up. Everyone can check out the Highly Optimized podcast. I drop episodes every 2 weeks on there. Just dropped one, like I said at the beginning, with my buddy Mark England last week. Got one with Hamilton Souther coming out in a couple weeks, and some other cool cats too. So yeah, thank you again, Alice. And yeah, super excited to connect with anyone who hears and resonates with this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. All that good stuff. I mean, I highly suggest you do one of those things
Yes,
because I
sir.
mean, I've done at least one of those things, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's amazing. Worth a try.
Heck yeah, dude.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
brother.
Brian.
Thank you.